If someone asked you what you have to do to have a relationship with Jesus, what would you tell them? If somebody asked you why you believe what you believe, what would you say? In this session, I want to give you a simple answer to those two questions. But first, I need to debunk a myth, okay? Most of us feel like we've got to be able to explain a lot of information to people, and we just don't feel like we know enough about the Bible to do that. We feel like we got to have all the answers, and we know that we don't, right? So it's intimidating. So let me just put you at ease. You do not need to be a Bible scholar to talk about following Jesus. You really only need to be able to tell your story, and you're an expert at that. Listen, people can argue about beliefs all day, but nobody can argue with your story, and you're an expert at it. So if somebody asks you about Christianity or Jesus, just tell them what your life was like before you began a relationship with Jesus, and then tell them how you began that relationship, and then explain what life is like now that you're following Him. That's really all you have to do to share your faith, and you can do that. I know you can. So now, let me talk about two big questions. What do you say if someone asks you why they should follow Jesus or what it means to follow Him? Well, here's how I explain it, okay? I explain it by saying, listen, we've all sinned, and sin is just any thought or behavior that's not loving towards God or people. So we've all done that, and everybody agrees with that. And then I explain our sin has created a gap between us and God. But Jesus died and He rose again to pay the penalty for our sins. He bridged that gap so we could connect with God and be made right with Him. So when we accept the gift of forgiveness He offers us, God adopts us into His family forever. You can explain it that simply. Or another way you can explain it is by using John 3:16. Everybody's at least heard of that reference, right? In that verse, Jesus tells us that number one, God loved, then two, God gave, and then we believe and we receive. You can explain it that simply. God loved us so much, He gave Jesus to pay for our sins. And when we believe or trust in what Jesus did to make us right with God, we receive forgiveness. We become a part of God's family. All somebody has to do is accept God's gift of forgiveness and choose to follow Him. Those are two simple ways that you can explain the basics to people. Jesus bridged that gap between us and God loved, God gave, we believe, we receive. Now, second question. What do you say if somebody asks you why you believe what you believe? Well, the answer to this one's really simple too. You just tell them you believe everything Jesus said because He rose from the dead. In other words, the resurrection is the reason you follow Jesus and believe what you believe. When Jesus predicted His own death and resurrection and He pulled it off, think about it. He validated everything He had taught, right? That's how we know we can believe Him. So if you'll listen to people and you'll learn their stories, if you'll ask questions about what they believe about God or faith or Christianity, you are going to find yourself in moments when they're going to be curious about what you believe. And that's when you can share your story of what life was like before Jesus, why you chose to follow Him, what life's like now with Him. And that's when you're going to have an opportunity at times in very simple terms to explain to them how they can have that same forgiveness, they can be a part of God's family too. And if you get follow-up questions about things that you're not sure how to answer, this happens to me all the time. It is okay. It's fine just to let them know that, man, I'm not sure how to answer that question, right? It's okay to say, I don't know. I'm going to need to think about that some more. Being real is way more important than trying to act like you have it all figured out. Now, we've got one more session in this series, and in this last session, I want to show you 3 circumstances that you can actually watch for, because when people are in these circumstances, they are most open to these conversations. But just remember, God can use you wherever you are. He can use you in the lives of people all around you. And you never know when a simple conversation might change everything for someone you care about.